Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Moore Memorial Library and the community of Greene, we're very excited to welcome Alicia Marsland Jaramel, local author. Alicia grew up here in the Greene community, and we're very excited to have her speak to us today about her newest book series. And I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
So, as he just said, hi, I'm Alicia Marsland Jaramel, and I was raised here in Greene, although I was born in Venezuela because my parents traveled around a lot before I was born and after I was born, and we did not move to Greene until I was 5 years old. And it was a wonderful, wonderful place to grow up. I can't think of a better one. My father used to say Greene was 50 years behind the times. And he meant it in the best possible way. People were friendly to each other. They were a little bit wary of outsiders until they got to know you. My dad's theory was it took 7 years. But once you were part of the community, they would do anything for you. And they would protect you if outsiders were trying to find out private secrets about you. They would just clam up, which was very, very nice. It was also nice that kids could go wherever they wanted. Now, I tended to stick near home, but I know my brothers went all over town. We could walk down to the swimming pool, and nobody worried about us. And I was up in the hills until the town clock rang 4 o'clock. My parents never worried. There was a funny incident, though. Now I'm going off track, but I'll come back. Where my mother came down to a bit of a swamp that was behind the new Raymond Corporation building and started calling us. All three of us were up there, my brothers and I. And she's yelling up in Julian Hill and saying, "You've got a dentist appointment!" So we come running down the hill and are faced with this swamp. And David got this bright idea, I think it was David, of pulling up handfuls of grass and throwing it on the swamp. And in this way, we were able to walk across to get to the dentist appointment. So we could basically do whatever we wanted. And there's only one caveat. If we did something wrong by supper time, our parents would know about it. But otherwise, it was a wonderful place to grow up. And I wrote my first story at about age of 5, but don't ask to read it because I have no idea where it went. And my favorite books were The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings. This was, of course, a little bit later. The Narnia books, and a ton of books that I hope are still somewhere back there in the children's section. The children's section used to be over here, and I about lived here. From starting in 2nd grade, in the summertime, I would walk the block from my house down here with a stack of books like this in my little arms and turn them back in, and then pick up another stack of books to take home and read. And basically, that's what taught me to read. Although I have to say, the teachers in Greene Central School were marvelously good, right? So, I'm going off track. So, let's see what I want to say. There was one book I didn't like, and it was The Yearling. And I think I read it when I was about 4th grade. So I come back with it, and I slam it down on the desk over there. And Mrs. Whitaker says, "Well, how'd you like the book, Lisa?" That was my nickname when I was growing up. And I said, "I didn't like it. The deer died." And she said, "Well, that's supposed to be a lesson about growing up and blah, blah, blah." And I said, "I don't care. The deer died." That was way over my head. It was just the deer shouldn't die. So you can tell that I have a soft spot for animals. And in our house, there was 1 billion animals. Well, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. There were lots of ants. There were probably 1 billion ants. But we had cats galore, all the time cats. Never a dog, probably because of the cats. We had a rabbit called Ragged. We had a guinea pig that vanished. And I would have broken my heart over it, but the fact of the matter is, it died while we were away. And the lady next door was watching the guinea pig and felt terrible about it. And my mother was afraid I would be hysterical. So it was like the guinea pig just vanished. And for days what happened to the guinea pig? So my mother felt finally that she had to tell me. And I didn't cry because at least my curiosity was satisfied. That made sense, the guinea pig died. We had a hamster, we had turtles. That did not go well. I had a parakeet. He flew out the front door in November, so he didn't last very long. I'm trying to think what else we might have had. The rabbit had to go because it had fleas. But we kept a box in the back, which was kind of attached to the house. I don't know what, it was a New England type of situation where the barn is actually attached to the house. And so we kept a lot of animals there. We definitely had mice. I had white rats. I killed them both because I was 5 and didn't know what I was doing. Wrap them in a sweater and leave them on the floor is not a good idea. But in any case, you can, except for when I was 5, you can tell that I had a soft spot for animals, like most of us. So maybe it's not a surprise that I started writing a series that involved rescuing animals. But the series is not a series of books about animals, but the animals are characters, and they have their own stories. And so do most of the people, the wife, the children, they all have their own stories. And even a few of these outside characters are wander in and out. So I'm lost again. Let's see. So I would say that one of the main interests of the book is human nature. And the year is 2165 AD, but don't hold me to it. It might be 2166 or 2165. It's somewhere around there. And it's a pretty dystopian world. And I guess I should, for some people, define dystopian means things are going really, really badly. And it's also a strange world. In some respects, it's very different from ours. But in a lot of ways, you feel at home because it's a lot like ours, probably because it's full of human beings being human. But another interesting side plot is aliens. And their little activities, because they're undercover and doing things which are affecting humans, and the people they're not really aware of them. But the aliens have their issues too, so that's also part of the interest of the story. Now I'm lost again. It may sound at this point as if this is a book too wide-ranging, or a series too wide-ranging and weird to be readable. But on Amazon, all 5 books have 5 stars. Well, the 3 that exist, the one that's about to come out will have 5 stars. I'm just saying. People like this series, all right? And the reviews are not fake reviews. I mean, I did ask friends at the beginning to review my books. But if Amazon figures out you're friends with someone on Facebook, they winnow that review out, even though it's a completely unbiased, this is what I really think review. They don't know the difference, so they just winnow them out. So all the ones that are on Amazon are people that I don't know that well, or don't know at all. And that makes me pretty convinced that if you read the series, you'll enjoy the series. I had 1 or 2 bad reviews. And one of them was a person who writes science fiction which is happy, where everything works out. It's somewhat interesting, but to me, how do you have a story where everything's worked out? But she didn't like it because everything's going to be horrible. So I got a 3-star review from her. So the main character, his name is Noah. Surprise, surprise. And his last name is Peterson. So Noah Peterson is an ordinary man who kind of finds him stuck with strange situations. And he has a lot of baggage from his past. When he first started out, he was a forest ranger. Then at some point or other, he's a Marine. I haven't quite figured out the timeline on that, but it's when he's younger. And he also becomes a spy because he blames the next door country for the death of his family. Then he goes down the tubes entirely because the government disappoints him. And so he spends a very dark period on the streets, meets his current wife, and starts over again as a ranger. And his new wife also has baggage. Her name is Marty. And he thinks he knows what her baggage is, but he finds out later that it's much more complicated than he thinks. They are currently childless. When you start at the beginning, they have no children, and they've been trying, but she's been having problems in that regard. So, go looking down again. He's an atheist. You might think that that's pretty obvious because he's had such a rough time. But he's bitter. Although he's not an evangelical atheist. He's not the kind of atheist who has to bash you on the head because you are believing in something, which his wife does. And he just leaves her alone after trying to argue with her for a while. And he's not the sort of person that if you come up with a little booklet with 4 steps in it to salvation, that he's even going to want to read it. So it remains to be seen whether he can be convinced of anything. But on the whole, he's a good man. He had a good upbringing, so he tries to do the right thing. I don't think I'd like him as a character if he weren't trying to do the right thing most of the time. When he screws up, it's not intentional, generally speaking. So we're on to the next step. I'm sorry, this is a terrible speech. People come up to me all the time, and they want to know, is it the end of the world? Or are we headed for the last days? And this is one of the baggages that one gets when one is married to a priest. They think I'm an expert on this. And, I look at the situation and I say, well, things were an awful lot worse in World War II. The Holocaust and then the gulags. And if you go back into ancient history, you can look at Canaan and all the very bizarre, evil things they got up to. And I think this just isn't bad enough to have the end of the world. Now, that's probably nobody knows because no one can predict the future. And we're even biblically told that even Jesus didn't know that when the end of the world was. But I just look at it and I go, you guys have no idea how bad it could get. So one of the themes of the book is showing people how bad it can get. Really, you have no idea. So there's some rather dark parts of the books because of that. My theory as an author is that the last moment of the last day is going to be when everything is going to heck in a handbasket. There's absolutely no hope left and the cavalry hasn't arrived. Because that's just how, if I were God, I would plot the story. Which doesn't mean that I'm right. I'm just saying, I don't think it's bad enough. That's my personal opinion. Another reason that I got into writing the book is other modern fears, like environmental fears, fears of animal extinction, worry about societal collapse, okay? So a lot of things are in these books regarding those fears. And what's funny is the first book, which is Story, was published in 2018. A lot of the things that are in the books happened between 2018 and 2022. So people looking at it without realizing how old, I started writing the series 15 years before the first book was published. So they'll think, oh, well, you're just ripping off the current situations. I'm just saying right now, that's not what I was doing. I was just looking at what can go wrong. And you make a good story when things go wrong. And what you end up with, my dad used to say, and my dad comes in a lot, but that's because he's a very important person to me, that when things go wrong, like the ALR scare and various other things that in our entire lifetimes have been being screamed about, is that when there's a problem, people generally get together and fix it. But in this case, our hero, Noah Peterson, is the only man in the world making any effort to save species. It's reached that bad a point. And he's got his flaws. So he's just doing the best he can. And a lot of things happen to get in his way. So vis-a-vis the situation, I'm not saying any of this stuff's going to happen. I'm not a prophet. I'm just saying that these are likely things that we should think about. And the other thing is that struggles are good for us. Tolkien made the observation in the book The Hobbit that the fun times and the good times don't make very good stories. It's when people have to struggle. And it's reading about their struggles that inspires us to do better. So that was kind of one of the things that really spoke to me that I wanted to write about. My last thing that I wanted to illustrate in the books is the world is a far stranger place than we think it is. There are a lot of things that go on, that happen, that we observe, and then we immediately forget them because they don't fit into our frame of reference. So my main character, Noah Peterson, has this kind of thing happen to him. Not frequently, because these things don't happen frequently, but they happen, and he's like, that's weird, and then he forgets about them. Later on, he's going to get some really big surprises from the things that he totally forgot about. So between being 5 years old and now, I did a lot of other things besides write. I did write one children's book, The Wizard's Daughter. And one thing I should emphasize about this series, it is not a children's series. It's for adults. You might say it's a wonder tale for adults, but there are parts that really aren't appropriate for children. However, I wrote them in such a way that I would hope that any child could pick them up and have no clue what just happened. It goes over their heads. So that's my hope. And I don't think, in the intervening time between the children's book and starting to write these books, I wasted my time. I wrote articles and so forth, but basically what I was doing was raising 4 children. And I think my husband and I did a pretty good job. And I think that's the most important job in the world, and it's one of the jobs my main character is very intense on, is raising his children. Though he isn't often there, so that complicates matters. But I don't think I would have been able to write these books when I was 20 or 30 or even 40. I didn't have enough experience of life to write these books. So I don't really feel like I wasted my time or I should have been writing. So my mother said to me once, here, see, my mother gets to come in on it, that for a long time she felt guilty because she had writing skills. And what she spent time doing was the taxes for the Shenango American and the subscription notices for the Shenango American, while we kids were also helping and collating newspapers and hiding from the men in the black suits who would catch my dad doing child labor. Because she felt she should have done more with her life. And then she realized, she really took to heart the parable of the talents, that you're supposed to multiply your talents. Then she realized that what she had done, she already had the talent for writing. What she'd done was she'd multiplied her talents. She'd raised children. She learned how to do taxes for a big business and so forth. And she was much more at peace with her life after she realized that. So we all think we're going to do magnificent things when we're young, but maybe this is just a training period and we're supposed to be just learning things rather than doing magnificent things. So anyway, what kind of books do you guys like? Has anybody got a preferred kind of book?
Stephen King.
You like Stephen King, so you like the horror stuff and the adventure.
Yeah, but he's not always horror. Some of it, he's just interesting.
Yeah, it's true, he's interesting. Okay, I tried Kurt Vonnegut once, and I'm afraid he went over my head.
You know, so, I read him when I was younger, and so I probably didn't get the meaning of it, but I want to start reading them again. There's a couple books I really like, but now that, like you're saying, now that I'm older, I probably have a different take on it.
Yeah, my parents said that about a number of books, that they didn't really understand them until they were older. Yeah. Well, I can tell you, there is horror and adventure in these books.
Probably one of my favorite authors, the only other author I've met besides yourself, would be Scott Turtle.
Great.
And he was dynamite. I saw him in Chicago. He signed my book about race relations. And that night, the race riots broke out in LA.
Wow,
Yeah.
that was a wild.
Go figure.
Yeah, amazing. Anybody else? What kind of books do you like?
All kinds.
Anybody for romance?
Nah.
Nah, not your thing.
Harlequin, no.
No, but not. Well, see, now I have this little book here. It's a novella, which is a little novella, and if you want to read it, you got to go on. The easiest way is I try to go on Amazon. I cannot find it. So if you just Google the page and the pier rests, then it will come up. And it's a weird thing because you get 200 free tokens, and then you have to buy tokens. But tokens are like 0.1 cent per token. So you can read this book for less than $5, probably quite a bit less. And I would love it if somebody would go on. It's for your phone, but you can do it on the computer too, and read it, because right now nobody has read it. I think it's the cutest little romance ever, but nobody has read it. So I point this out. Also, what?
I'll volunteer.
Oh, please do. I think it's cute.
Because I still haven't got back to Spokane, Washington, where I live at.
Oh,
It
okay.
might take me a couple more weeks.
Oh, well, that's great. It's got animals in it, but they are not the main characters. There's one animal character who's really kind of a stitch. And then we have the 3 books in the series, Tall Tale, Story, and Lie. That Lie is a pretty dark book. It gets pretty dark as you go into the series. But there's still a happy ending. I do not know why people don't write books with happy endings all the time, except maybe you want to be surprised by a sad ending once in a while. But really, in this day and age, who needs to read a book that's a tragedy? It's just not emotionally good for us. So these are all happy endings, and they also, you're not left hanging like piles of Pauline waiting for the train to run over her, because each book is a standalone. So the next book in the series is called But True. And I finished writing it, but there's a lot more that goes on in the process besides writing it. I have to rewrite it. Then I have to put in the list of chapters. Then I have to put in all the end matter or back matter. And they have to put in all the front matter. And then they have to upload it. This is an interesting thing. Publishing is very different from the way it was when I was growing up. And, you know, we played in a playhouse made from the crate that the Gutenberg press came in. It's not the Gutenberg, what was it? It was the name of a press from Germany, anyway. And we did hot press, but before that we had cold press type. And my dad had a linotype machine. Now what happens is you upload the information into Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing, and they will format it, and they will put it on their list of books. It's available within 48 hours. Actually, sometimes it's available within 5 hours. And then they don't print it. There's no warehouse full of books. It's the most interesting thing. Somebody orders your book on Amazon, and it's printed at that time. It just pops out of the computer through some kind of printer, and they box it up and send it to you. It's almost instantaneous, which I think is marvelous. But it's a completely different system for what we used to have. So, nobody got another kind of book they like?
You just stoked a memory. My crazy ex-wife. I love collecting books on all kinds of subjects, whether it be studs or beer. I used to brew my own beer, or nautical, or about fire departments. I was a fireman years ago. So I have boxes of books. The ones I love, I keep. The ones I get to look at, I give to Goodwill or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So my ex-wife, to understand, I had 2 or 3 bookshelves full of books. Why don't you just get ebooks? And it'll be less clutter. I'm like, he just didn't get it.
No.
Because if the power goes out, you're reading by candle, you can grab that book, you feel like reading again.
Right.
You know, she said she liked to read, but I never once in 12 years saw her actually read a book.
Well, in my dystopian mindset, especially after writing these, what happens if all the books are ebooks and they have the pulse?
Yeah.
We lose it all. We cannot afford to lose it all. We have to have physical books.
Sounds a little bit like some Kurt Vonnegut story, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it could happen. That's the problem. People say, that'll never happen. I don't know how many times in my life I've heard that, and like the next year, that's what happened. So it's better to be safe than sorry in my mind. So the last thing I'd like to say, or the next to last thing, is that this is a cross-genre series, which makes it a little difficult to sell because it's not your quintessential romance. It's not your quintessential mystery. It's not your quintessential science fiction. It's nothing like most fantasies, okay? And so that's a disadvantage because it's difficult to market. But the advantage is, whatever kind of book you like this. because it's got elements of what you like in it, because it has elements of what I like in it. So there's that. Now, the other thing is that I'm running a contest. Now, this is ridiculous, but hey, I'm just always learning new ways to market. I have here 12 fantasy science fiction books I will give you if you win the contest. Or if it happens to be a child who wins the contest, this entire art set. I've got 4 children panting and drooling over this art set. But the point to get on in this contest, all you have to do is sign up for my email list. And what happens, I promise you, you will not get an email a day. I'm just way too lazy. The only times you'll ever get an email from me is when a book is coming out, or if I run another contest, or if you've won the contest. So if you do sign up for my email list, as 2 people have already done, what will happen is you'll get an email from me saying, congratulations, you signed up for the contest. And this is the projected date of the new book, but true. And then if you're lucky, the next email you get is in October, sometime after the 1st, saying, congratulations, you won these books. And do you want them in Kindle form or paperback form? And so I hope you will go ahead and look and sign up. Oh, I forgot something. This is my own illustration that I did for the romance. And it doesn't look right on the computer, and I don't know why. But she's got a longer nose in the computer, no matter what I do. And this is part, if you compare it to the 3rd book, Lie, this is the outline of the painting. This is the actual painting that I did for the cover of Lie. Yeah, it does take a while, but I like doing it. And this is the cover of the next book, But True, in the beginning stages. I've decided to do it larger, which is going to take 4 pieces of paper. So this is the left-hand corner, and then there'll be the right-hand corner, and so forth. And I usually do a complete painting of something else that goes in the middle. So you can come and look at those if you want, and you can come and sign up for my email list if you want. Oh, and you can take flyers if you want to get, you know, like, oh, I'm not really that interested, but I know somebody who would be interested. Oh, look, it's 2163. I told you I wasn't necessarily right. 2163 AD, so you can hand these out to anybody who might be interested. But just remember, it's not a children's book. It's not a children's series. So I thank you all for coming. It's much appreciated. And I hope.
59-year-old that acts like a child.
That, perfect. Perfect. Because it's written with children's books in mind. I really love children's books. Ever since I started writing children's books, the first one, I had fairly good success at keeping anything adult out of it. The second one, which is like halfway done, which is about the real childhood of Maryland, that was problematic because there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on that you really don't want children reading about. So I'm going to finish that probably when this series is done. And then I went on hiatus being a mother and whatnot. So this has things, as I said, that is not appropriate to children. But if they want to read it, they'll probably be fine because they can't figure out what I just said. So there you go. And thank you all again for coming.